Street photography POVs are mighty popular here on YouTube, and if you're looking at starting a channel focused on photography, then making a few of these can be a good place to start. What I love about these videos is it allows you to have an insight into how a photographer approaches their craft, and it's one of the most practical ways of learning photography while actually going out and doing it for yourself. And I like to think that these kind of videos can help spark ideas, provide inspiration, and encourage other photographers to pick up their own camera and get creating. Now, I have shot countless street POVs here on this channel, and I like to think that over the years, with plenty of trial and error, that I've been able to develop a streamlined system that really works well for me, and that is what I'd like to share with you today: how I shoot street photography POVs. Before you go out onto the streets and start shooting a POV, you need the essential 5. The first and most obvious being a camera to actually shoot with. Now, the brilliant part about these kind of videos is it can be any camera you have readily available to yourself. That be a DSLR, a point and shoot, a mirrorless camera, or even just your phone. Next, we're going to need a point of view camera, and what we're looking for here is something that is stabilized so we don't get motion sickness watching shaky footage. Good audio, as I don't actually use an external mic to pick up sound, mainly because once the camera is mounted to my chest, it's not too far away from my gob to pick up good sound. And I have a loud mouth. Don't add that bit in. We also want something that is wide angled so you can show the environment you're shooting in as well as you using the camera. And my go-to camera for all of this is the DJI Action 4. Now, I actually switched from using GoPros mid last year because my GoPro Hero 11 randomly died on me one day, and I decided to take the risk, switch to DJI, and honestly, it was the best decision I ever made. Now, one of the biggest benefits with using DJI over GoPro is the superior battery, ideal when you are shooting these longer form kind of videos, and we'll talk more about batteries in a second, but first, I want to show you how I set up my Action 4 to film these POVs. In terms of resolution and frame rate, I have this set to 4K 25p, I have my stabilization set to rock steady, my exposure is set to auto, and the ISO is set to the minimum of 100 to 3200 in the day, and if needed at night, that maximum is bumped up to 12,800. This is a personal preference, but I have my color set to D-Log M, so if I ever want to do any color grading in post, I have a bit more flexibility to do so. And then finally, when it comes to field of view, I have this set at ultra wide. Next, we need a micro SD card. I recommend a minimum of 128 gig, especially if you're going to be shooting with higher resolutions for longer periods of time. I personally use this 256 gig V30 Extreme Pro card, which gives me over 5 hours record time, which in most situations is overkill. I'll leave some links to the micro SD cards that I recommend in the description below, along with everything else I am mentioning today. They will be affiliate links, however, you don't pay anything extra. It's just if you use those links, I get a little bit of kickback from Amazon, which just helps support the channel. As I mentioned earlier, the battery on the DJI Action 4 is incredible. However, I still think it's a good idea to carry some extra batteries with you just in case. When I bought the DJI Action 4, I did go for the bundle, which is what I'd recommend other people to do because it does include the charging case and an additional 2 extra batteries. So in total, you have 3 batteries right there and will cover you for a full day of shooting. But just to be safe, I do also sometimes carry with me a power bank, so if those batteries do run out, I can charge them really quickly with this because the DJI batteries go from 0 to like 80% of battery in about 20-25 minutes. The fifth and final essential you're going to need to be able to film one of these POV videos is a chest mount. Now, funny enough, I'm actually still using the GoPro chest mount, but now using it with a DJI camera, which is kind of a conflict of like brands, ain't it? But there are other ones on the market that are much cheaper that will do the job for less. I just like using the GoPro one because it is the most comfy. I found, at least anyway. Once we've got these essentials, we're almost ready to start shooting. But before we do, I want to share with you a few key tips and insights that I have picked up on over the years from shooting POVs. First off, when you are shooting POVs, you want to avoid using the viewfinder and instead use the rear LCD screen to give your viewer the best viewing experience possible. This lets them see your settings in real time and understand how you're framing your shots. Now, this may take some getting used to, but when you're shooting a POV video, try and hold your camera a little bit more further out and adjust your POV camera accordingly so it stays visible in the frame as much as possible. But of course, don't let that sacrifice the shots. Like, if you need to go high up to get a shot and your POV camera can't see it, don't worry about it, the audience will understand. If you need to go low down and the audience can't see it, again, they'll understand. Don't sacrifice the shot just for the viewer's experience, because the viewer's experience will be improved if you get the shot, if you get what I mean. Does that make sense? This next step isn't essential, but it can be helpful, especially if you're visiting somewhere new, and that is planning your route. When I'm visiting a new place, especially abroad, I like to do research into the areas that I want to explore, and then try and plan a route accordingly so I utilize the time whilst I'm there. So for example, when I visited New York, I knew exactly which locations I wanted to cover. I saved the zip codes for each location and planned a route that allowed me to hit all of them efficiently. This approach helped me maximize my time and focus on creating great content rather than figuring things out on the go. That said, I do encourage getting lost in a city if it's of course safe to do so, because some of my best shots have come from just wandering. When you're out shooting a POV, talking to the audience can be both engaging and informative, because it can give a deeper insight into your creative process. For example, you might want to share what kind of subjects you're looking for, what you find interesting about a specific composition, or why you're drawn to a specific subject. Explaining what and why a particular subject is interesting to you provides context for the viewers watching. You can also throw in details about what camera settings you're using and how that's going to help you capture that photograph. This not only enhances the viewer's understanding, but also deepens their connection with your creative process. Plus, this approach may spark ideas with your viewers who may be encouraged to try out similar things in their own shoots. So don't be afraid to experiment and try new things. The beauty of this kind of video style is if it doesn't work out, you can always cut it later in post. Now I should mention, when shooting a POV for the first time, having a camera strapped to your chest, it is going to be awkward. Your first time shooting a POV video is going to be the absolute worst, and I speak from experience there. But suffer through that, and gradually, over time, you're going to start noticing great improvements to your own POV videos. Speaking of time, whilst you're out shooting POV videos, don't feel like you need to rush. When I started shooting POVs, I felt obligated to try and cover as many locations as possible. So it meant I wasn't spending that much time in each location. And the photos I was getting as a result were okay to average at best. But now I've slowed down. I take my time in locations, and if I need to fish at a location for 10-15 minutes to get that one perfect frame, I will, because I know all the excess of me waiting can be cut later in post. Speaking of post, you now join me at my post-production suite. So at this point, we have shot all the photos for the POV, we have filmed everything for the POV, and it's time to get into the editing process. But before we do, we need to do backup and photo editing. When it comes to backing up my POV footage, this is really straightforward. So within my YouTube projects folder, I will create a new folder in relevance to the location that I was shooting in. So let's just take the Vietnam POV as an example here. Within that folder, I will create another folder called DJI Rushes, and this is where I will drag and drop all my POV footage. So that's nice and straightforward. Where it gets a little bit more convoluted is when it comes to backing up my photography. There are a few more extra steps, but I think that's mainly down to me being quite OCD. So as an example here, jumping into my photography folder, within that folder I will have this folder, 1.raw/HQ and Instagram. Going into that folder, it's broken down into genres, so automotive, landscape and hikes, portrait photography, street and travel. Now if I am doing street photography abroad, I will put that into the travel folder because it's just a lot more easier to have all my images in there. If I'm doing street photography in the UK, I will just put that into the street photography folder. So for this example, we'll just go into the street photography folder, and then here, that is broken down again based on location. So we're going to go into the London folder, and then again, that is broken down even further based on the camera I was using and the date I was maybe using that camera as well. It depends. I get a bit lazy when it comes to maintaining consistency. So the folder we're going to use as an example here is the London Tamron 70-70. In here, there are our final three folders. We have one that is dedicated to HQ, which stands for high quality, which is the highest possible quality we can export our photograph. And then I have my IG folder, which is for Instagram. So these are photographs that have been exported to fit the Instagram algorithm and best export settings. And then finally, we have my raw dedicated folder for all the raw photographs. So this is where I will drag and drop all the raw photographs. Is that straightforward enough? Once all the raw files are backed up, I will start importing them all into Lightroom. I use Lightroom Classic for all my photo editing, and once they're all in Lightroom, I will start organizing the photos I want to keep and the ones I want to delete. The method that I prefer to use to organize through the photos I want to keep and delete is really straightforward, and you can go through thousands of photographs so quickly. So here, any photograph that I want to keep, I will press 1 on the keyboard, and that is going to give your photo a rating. Then any photograph I don't want to keep, I will bypass it, do nothing, and repeat this process until I get to the end of the folder. Once I've gone through the entire folder, I will go to this tab at the bottom where it says filter off, and then I will change that to unrated. This is going to show me all the photographs I didn't rate, and these are all the photographs I want to delete. I will then go to this gallery view at the bottom here, and then it's just a case of Control A, delete, and then delete from disk. Once that's sorted, I'll begin editing the photos I want to use for the POV, but I'm not going to show you that process today. I will save that for a future video. Now I'm going to show you how I would edit one of my POV videos, and the software I use for this is Adobe Premiere Pro. So one thing that I always like to include with any of my POV videos is an intro and an outro. Sometimes I will film these on locations if I remember, other times I'll just film them back here in the studio. The intros are all about setting the scene for the videos, so in these I will include information such as where I'm shooting, what I'm shooting, and what camera and lens I am using, among other details if needed. So we're going to cut this intro sequence, and it should be pretty straightforward because of a little trick I use. If you look here, you'll notice the audio track has a little spike in it, and that's because I clapped loudly into the microphone. This is a method that I started implementing last year, so whenever I have finished making a point about something and I am happy with how I've articulated it, I clap loudly into the microphone, and this creates a really clear audio marker. So when I'm editing, I know exactly when the good take ends, and I can just work backwards from there and get the bit I need. Smart, eh? Honestly, try it for yourself. You'll save yourself a lot of time editing, and you can thank me later. Over the intro, I will color grade it, throw some music underneath to set the tone, and this would actually be the perfect place to have an ad read for Artlist. And just so it happens, they haven't sponsored today's video. Anyway, once I've done that, it's time to dive into the POV footage. By this point, I've already edited the photos, so I have a good idea of which clips I want to include. From here, it's just a matter of scrubbing through the footage to find where each clip begins. I always try and make sure to include the beginning, middle, and end of each clip, so the audience can fully experience the process. They can see how I spotted the shot, how I composed it, the final result, and if you're familiar with my POVs, how I react, which is normally full of excitement and enthusiasm. And that's another tip: when you're out shooting POVs, be yourself, relax, enjoy the creative process, and don't overthink things. Once I've scrubbed through all the clips and everything is laid down, I will create an adjustment layer, place it over all the DJI clips, and simply add a conversion LUT, which you can download for free from DJI's website. With that sorted, the next step is to add the photos. I like using a white background to showcase my photos, as it really makes them stand out. With the white background set, the next step is to add and resize the photos. I like to give my images plenty of real estate, and I reckon for this photo about 85 will do pretty nicely. You might also notice I have two photos here. One is the before and the other is the after. I enjoy showcasing my before and after shots and transitioning between them like this. Creating this transition is really straightforward. In the effects panel, search for a transition called wipe. Now just drag the transition between the before and after image, adjust the duration to your preference, and you'll have a smooth transition between these two images. Once all the photos are down on the timeline and I'm happy with how everything is scaled and looking, I move back to the first image and start adding camera and lens details. I include shutter speed, aperture, and ISO settings, and if I'm using a zoom lens, I'll also add the focal length as well. Additionally, if I've used multiple lenses during the POV, I'll note those details at the top of screen. This way viewers can easily see which gear and settings I was using for each photograph. Once I've repeated this process for all my photos, I move on to the final touches. This includes adding music if I think it's needed, and making sure the audio clips between each DJI clip flow smoothly. If not, I will add a fade between audio clips to avoid anything too jarring. And with that done, I have a finished timeline ready to export. So when it comes to actually exporting my POVs, this is really straightforward. So we go to File, export, media. And then I use this preset here, this YouTube preset, and you can just grab this from more presets right here. So if I just search up YouTube, you see I've got it starred. This is the exporting settings that I use for all my YouTube videos because it just does a terrific job. You can see all the details right here, but honestly, just use that preset and you're good to go. And once the video is exported, the final step is uploading the video to YouTube. While my video is uploading, I'll add all the important details like the title, description, and upload a thumbnail. For my thumbnails, I usually go with a shot of the camera in my hand or a middle frame featuring the camera flanked by 2 complementary photos on either side. Next, I'll add some tags, and if you're new to YouTube, tags are essential for getting your video in the right search results. Be sure to add as many relevant tags as you can to improve your video's discoverability. And with that all ready to go, that is how I create a street photography POV from start to finish. I do hope that this video has been helpful, it's been engaging, and if you do have any further questions, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. If you would like to check out any of my POV videos, there are a couple of recent ones right here, but with all that said and done, until next time, create, explore, and inspire.